So what we call it, the priority projects, part of One Community Co-operatives is there's three main projects. One of them is Farmacy Co-op, which is what a lot of you will be aware of, which has been operating for over 2 years now, and I'll go into that more shortly. The second priority project is called One Community Network, another not-for-profit co-op. And then the third priority project is called Communitas Cooperative, and I'll go into that and give you an overview on that shortly. So they're the three main projects as part of the One Community Cooperatives vision and strategy. So I'll start with Communitas Cooperative. I'm going to create a separate presentation for this project, and that will be launched in a few weeks. So at the beginning of January, so we're only a few weeks away, because that's going to be, this project's going to be launched for the new year. So as I said, it's another not-for-profit social enterprise. So kind of, you know, what we say a sister business of Farmacy Co-op. And I said launching in the new year. So just to give you a kind of an idea of why we came up with this name. So so Loretta and I, again, have co-founded this particular business. But it's another cooperative. And again, it's going to be a multi-stakeholder cooperative. So everyone involved in this will own it. So it's taken two words, combined the two meanings of those words to create like a new word. So eco, obviously we've all heard this many times, this word, but it comes from ancient Greek, it's the word ecos in ancient Greek, and it basically means house. So it's when you say house, what is within a house, you know, things are produced, things are moved around, you know, it's a system basically. And there's many words that use, you know, the word eco, so ecology, you know, economy, you know, ecosystems. So we all know what they all mean. And then the second word, which some people might not be more familiar with, is the word communitas. So that's actually Latin. And so what that word, or what the meaning of that word, it's all about solidarity and bonding, or what they say, a transitional state together. So the very spirit of community. And another meaning or explanation of communitas to use it. So in communitas, for example, you would say it's about people standing together, even outside of society. So community spirit, transitional. It's, you know, it captures basically what Communitas is going to be doing. Those particular meanings. Yeah. So what is Communitas Cooperative? What we're going to be doing? So that particular project and social enterprise is going to be focused on affordable housing and property development. So as I touched on earlier in terms of the bigger vision, these developments, these housing developments are going to be built within forests, food forests. So we've given them the name like forest eco villages, but also forest eco neighborhoods. So as it would suggest, you know, a neighborhood is a smaller number of homes, a village is larger number of homes, but also more services on site. And I'll go into that a little bit today, but more on the presentation for January. So Communitas Cooperative will also be, you know, focused as well as housing, food element. So these housing developments are you know, self-sufficient communities, basically. So how, you know, food is a big part of that, and how we will partner with our sister business, Farmacy Co-op, for that side of things. And, you know, energy and water is a big part of that, how those developments will create their own energy and water and be self-sufficient. And a big thing is community, how community is created in many ways. So just to give you a quick overview of like the homes and what we will be creating. And this particular project, this is not a new thing. Communitas Cooperative, we've been working on this for at least 4 years now. It's a project which we were thinking of launching in 2019. We then decided to focus on Farmacy Co-op in terms of the food and the health side of things. And then 2020, kind of all that happened. So Communitas Cooperative was paused whilst we launched Farmacy Co-op and really got that established. But we're ready to unpause this project now. So the housing, it's all about what we call prefabricated design or modular building techniques. So this is where the affordability comes in, and it's using locally grown organic straw and using local timber to create these buildings. And as you can see there in one of the images, these are not just like you think straw homes. These are beautiful in terms of architecture, in terms of design, on how they look, and the houses, and this project's already mapped out and ready to go, using what's called passive house standards. So passive house is very, very well insulated as an envelope as the building, in terms of the materials and the natural materials used, triple glazed, everything's super sealed. So typically those passive house homes only need to use about 20% of energy to keep them warm. And so obviously we're focused on then creating our own energy. So using those passive house design and everything else, we're hopeful that we can keep the homes warm, hot water. Well, when I say hopeful, it's already been done. So it's not hopeful. We're pretty confident on that. So there's institutions which we've been in touch with in the past and we reconnected to recently. So one of them is called the International Wellbeing Institute, and that's particular is a kind of certification or focus on how to build homes from a health and well-being perspective. So anything from how the building and home reduces stress and clean air and the lighting and everything is thought out. Also the international what's called Living Future Institute. So they've got what they call living building challenges, or living community challenges. So again, it's focused on building design and how it's what they call a living building, not just natural materials, but how is it incorporated within nature? And that's where a big an area is called biophilic design. Fascinating area to look into if you've not heard of it. But again, it's the design of buildings and areas, but biophilic just means the love of nature, really. And so everything from, again, the materials used, but the colors and how everything is designed and looks and how you can see nature through the windows and everything like that. It's beautiful looking homes, but also, again, the science is there in terms of the studies they've done in terms of biophilic design. We naturally need to be connected to nature, but we've been disconnected, and that's what's creating a lot of issues in terms of health and well-being. So these sorts of buildings and design connects people again, and as I said earlier, using permaculture design principles and net zero energy and water. So in terms of what that means, it's just the buildings use less energy and water. They need to use less than what they create. So these buildings and these developments are kind of what's called maybe microgrids. I won't go into that now, but that's for another presentation. So the second priority project to talk about here is what's called One Community Network. So, and again, we're going to do a separate presentation on this, but Just for now, as an overview, this project's about mapping out local economies. So doing research and analysis, looking at local areas and communities to understand access to essential items and services. So as you can just imagine, what is produced locally, what items are produced, what services are on offer, and using a basic spreadsheet, doing the research. And once you do that, and we've done it locally, and we've had other people do this locally, there are a lot of gaps. Looking for things produced locally. Again, just here where we are in the Peak District, there isn't a lot at all, and especially when you're looking at natural or organic, not a lot. So also part of this kind of mapping out process, finding like-minded businesses and groups. So really understanding that whole network locally, because it's all about working together and building resilience. As cooperative, and that would suggest, and we're a big believer in collaboration. We've all got to work together to create these systems, and creating that interconnectedness, which we're a big believer in. So another part of the One Community Network is the promotional platform, is what we're calling it. And this is just simply promoting like-minded organizations. So these organizations or groups or even businesses, they're not part of the One Community Cooperative family, but they share a similar vision and mission. So we want to, the One Community Network as a platform will be promoting those businesses and organizations. So people will be able to go to the website and use the platform within their local area to see what access they've got locally to everything they need within their local community. And then they will be able to see what they can access regionally, what is available, and then even things are not available regionally once you do the research, how they can access things nationally as well. So the platform, the One Community Network platform, we will be prioritizing in terms of promoting other co-ops for obvious reasons, and other not-for-profit businesses and groups as well, because again they have the same mission in terms of they're there to benefit the people and nature. Other organizations, if the legal setup is a for-profit legal setup, the legal requirement is to maximize profit. They might have ideas of wanting to help with it could be regeneration of nature or eco objectives or whatever it might be. We will promote those groups, but we will prioritize the platform. We'll prioritize promoting other co-ops and not-for-profits. But One Community Network, this is the business that will be creating that shared service offering, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of all those core functions that other community groups and other community businesses where they might need support. And we want to offer that support. Like I said, whether it's funding, whether it's marketing, website creation, whether it's strategy advice around business development and sales or legal or finance or whatever it might be, One Community Network will be creating a kind of head office function, if you want to call it that, to support local groups. And then we will work on making sure these groups are connected all over the country. So for example, we'll have someone who's got a lot of experience in marketing, for just to use that function as an example. Other local groups will have people who might be the marketing coordinator, whether it's a volunteer, whether it's someone who's part of a small group or small business. But we'll create that circle, if you want to call it a circle, because we're a big believer in sociocracy as a governance structure. But just you can use the word team, where we can have all the different marketing volunteers from all the different groups all over the country, all working together. We can provide advice and guidance and strategy, but we can share ideas and everyone can support each other. So again, that's that big, the vision we've got in terms of networking and ecosystem kind of ways of doing things. So another part of the One Community Network is part of the strategy of that particular not-for-profit co-op is the community hub model. So they will be so One Community Network will be focused on, getting the funding and creating the blueprints of, and so being able to replicate community hubs all over the country. And these community hubs will be separate organizations, as I said earlier, locally owned by local members, decentralized in power. But One Community Network will be about those blueprints and then allowing local groups to create their own community hubs and organizations. So, this could be existing buildings or acquiring land. And so within those community hub spaces, there could be all sorts of services on offer, but picking and packing operations like what we've got here in Bakewell at the moment for Farmacy Co-op. Warehousing and distribution could be part of these community hubs because it's maybe locally focused. But some of the core and essential services is more kind of retail, if you want to call it that, like a local farmers market concept within those hubs, or local economic hubs. So everything what's produced locally could be within that hub space for people to access. Eateries, locally made food, people can go and access pre-made food within those spaces. When I say eatery, think of cafes and other things like that. Health services is another core service those hubs would offer, and so many other services, whether it's educational or anything else, business services. But it's up to the local people to decide what goes on within those hubs. And these hubs across England, across the UK, are all connected again, offering that secure access to food and essential items as well as other services. So just lastly on One Community Network, the kind of different phases of this, what we've got as a strategy is what's called offering mutual credit infrastructure. So these are whether you want to call it historical economies, ancient economies, were built on. I know a lot of people think it was more bartering, and that's obviously had an element of local economies, but it's been more about mutual credit. And what mutual credit is it's just what we would call a ledger. So a ledger is a book. Traditionally, it was in a book written down, but it's like a collection of accounts. So it just kind of keeps account of transactions. They're all recorded. So whether it was written down or now we've got the technology. And just to clarify on One Community Network, this is a project we've been working on for a few years. The technology of offering mutual credit as a platform has already been developed. It's ready to go. It's just that this project's was paused. So mutual credit offers communities trade without any money, the need of money. So it's what we call what we see as the backbone of a local economy. So as our current economic systems, as they continue to collapse, things, inflation's going to continue, continued excessive inflation leading up towards hyperinflation as things, the cost of living crisis will get even worse, unfortunately. So money will be much more difficult to come by, a lot more poverty, etc. So the mutual credit gives everyone secure access to all essential items and services that they need and their family needs. So anyone can contribute, so everyone can have access. So if you've got no money, got no job, it doesn't matter. You can still access healthy food, all the items you need, and services you need. So just there's so many examples of this working all over this country, all over the world. But just to mention one of them, it's called Sardex, which was developed in an island called Sardinia, just off Italy, in 2008 with one of the economic downturns, credit crunch, I think they called it back then. They had no money, no one had work, the factories weren't working, they couldn't buy food, they couldn't do anything. And then they thought, well, it's actually someone I know who went to the same university as me. He and his friends in Sardinia, they then created mutual credit as a platform, called it Sardex, and everyone started contributing, growing food, working in the factories, etc. Because everything was there, no money was used, and they built a strong local economy again. And that's grown and grown. They have millions of pounds of transactions going through their platform now. And that's just one example. So mutual credit has always been built on local trust. As you can imagine, a local community, a local economy, what is created and produced locally, and everything's exchanged. And I'm not going into too much detail now because I haven't got time, but I will do in another presentation. But the technology that we've got now and we've got developed, as well as having local mutual credit platforms or clubs, we can now connect local mutual credit clubs to other communities. So if you can imagine accessing something, if I can't get hold of it within my local community, so no one is making natural soap as an example, but another community, someone is creating soap, I can use the mutual credit, I can access soap as an example. And I'll go into that in more detail another time, but moving on. So just to get onto Farmacy Co-op, because obviously this is the project which Loretta and I have been focused on, and most of our time now for the last, what is it? It's coming up to nearly 3 years. So we launched Farmacy Co-op in February 2020, literally just before COVID was a thing. And as the name would suggest, it was always about farming or regenerative farming, local, access to organic produce, but connected with healthcare and how those two systems should be working together. And that famous quote from Hippocrates, which is "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine be thy food." That was a big part of what we believed in. And we launched it just before the first lockdowns, etc. But since all that kind of took place, we did shift or pivot a little bit and change kind of what the plans. We're still doing the same thing. It's the same strategy and vision, but rather than being more locally focused, we've kind of then expanded that out to create this national infrastructure. So Farmacy Co-op is another not-for-profit social enterprise. It's actually technically a worker co-op. So we've got 2 workers, which is me and Loretta. With a co-op, a member is an owner. So we have 2 workers or 2 members at the moment. So and one of the workers, which is me, is paid part-time to coordinate the Farmacy Co-op project, or run the business essentially. It needs much more time than part-time, and I'm working full-time hours on it, basically, but it's got to be done. But it's the business itself is run by volunteers. The packing and the distribution, which we do every 2 weeks. There's 40 people now, 40 volunteers helping us with packing and with driving, etc. And without these people, these are amazing people, and without these, Farmacy Co-op wouldn't really exist. So a big thank you to everyone who's helped us from the beginning. A few people to mention, so we can't go into into everyone's names, but John Licata, who's our very first driver, who's still helping us now. A big shout out to Lisa, who was our very first packing volunteer, and she's been helping us every 2 weeks, not missed a single packing day in over 2 years. A big shout out to Adele as well, who has spent a lot of time helping us She's been great support, and she's still there every time helping us pack. She's been involved in other kind of coordination of projects as well. So she's fantastic. And another, what we say, core volunteer, Randall, who's been helping out a lot as well recently in terms of the operational side of things as well. And there's many other people I can't go into now, but big thank you to everyone. So Farmacy Co-op is focused on solutions, as I've mentioned already. It's all about secure access to organic food, natural essential items, improving health and well-being, regenerating ecosystems and improving biodiversity, building stronger communities which are resilient to any crisis and allows the communities to thrive. So Farmacy Co-op, some main areas to focus on: food systems, obviously. On the growing side, again, it's all about what we call agroecology, agriculture, but with the ecology in mind. So nature-friendly farming or regenerative farming. So Farmacy Co-op are focused on horticulture and arable. So when we talk about these farming methods, so in terms of horticulture, this is fruits, veg, salads and greens, all of those items. And arable, whether you're looking at grains and the cereals and all the legumes, like the beans and the pulses and the lentils and all that, the peas and all of those sorts of things. So that's what we're focused on. There are other organisations which are, in terms of regenerative farming, are focused on those. But Farmacy Co-op are focused on those farming methods. So in terms of certified organic farms and market gardens, so at the moment we've got access to, it's more than 30 and growing certified organic farms. So that gives us the diversity from these are farms all over the country. And because if you look at locally, if you just look at the Peak District, if you look at especially regenerative horticulture and arable, nothing really about. Organic, hardly anything about. So a lot of we've got to look further afield, and there are areas of the country which are better. They've got better soil and weather for various harvests and crops, etc. So we need that diversity, and people are used to choice. Rather than just something which is produced locally, a few items. People want choice. So certification of being organic certified is what we've focused on up to now, and that's what we will continue to focus on. But there are community farms and gardens across the country which are using organic growing methods. So whether this is not using the chemicals and the poisons like industrial farming, no-till, not damaging the soil, etc. They're not specifically certified because that process, it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time. So these smaller community farms, a lot of them don't really want to do it. So, but they're growing using organic methods. So we will start incorporating them, but making it clear to everyone within the public, so you'll know what is certified and what is not certified, but using organic growing methods. And there are new accreditations, if you want to call it that, coming along. Like I had a conversation with Catherine from the People's Food and Farming Alliance, and they're a fairly new alliance, and they're looking into new accreditations in terms of focused on regenerative farming. So there's that to look at as well. So Farmacy Co-op will be focused on launching new farms, and every single farmer within our strategy is a not-for-profit co-op. So again, it's locally owned, decentralized, and these are all about being secure and resilient and health focused as well in terms of these farms. So the type of farm, as I've said, what we'll be launching and helping to launch is, and when I say launching, we'll be getting funding and raising capital to actually launch these local farms, also partnering with local groups who have that local expertise as well, to go into kind of more partnerships for these farms. There's existing groups who are launching farms, new farms now, which will we won't be involved in terms of the creation of them, but we will be supporting them in terms of buying produce and supporting them in many ways. So so the different types of farms we're looked at, as I've said, regenerative horticulture, regenerative arable. We're going to be focused on food forest design and implementation. Agroforestry is a big part of what we'll be doing, and market gardens. So they're kind of three main types of farms. And as I've said, locally owned and focused, and connected to our network. So these farms, as I said, locally focused, producing harvests and the fruits and the vegetables, etc., for the local community and their members. But surplus that they can create, we can buy. Our network, our co-op can buy, which keeps them financially sustained as well. So all these different projects have to be financially sustained. So that's what we're focused on as well. And whether that's acquiring land, and there's different ways of acquiring land. It doesn't have to cost any money either. We've had calls of people wanting to donate land. We've had calls and emails of people wanting to lease land and give us land for us to use for food production. And there's other ways of acquiring land through what's called like a community land asset transfer or a community transfer. So local authorities own lots of land. And if you're a not-for-profit community-focused organization, they will transfer the asset of that land to your group. So they don't own it anymore. You own it, the people own it, and you use it to grow healthy food. And we're going to be focused as well on converting industrial farms. And there's different projects who are already doing this. And what I'm saying now, it's nothing majorly new. It's just that this is what we're going to be focused on within our project. So a lot of these industrial farms, whether it's monocrops, using heavily on the chemical side, they can be regenerated quickly to get those poisons out of the ground and regenerate the soil. And a lot of those industrial livestock farms, which, we drive around the Peak District, hundreds of acres of land, and look around and there's like about 20 animals. And these animals, a lot of them are not being produced, if you want to call it, for local markets. A lot of them are sold and exported. It's not that the land isn't being used for our benefit. There's thousands of acres of land there from industrial livestock farms, which we could use. So yeah, that's all the launching the new farms. And just to whiz over the collaborations, we've spoken to some of these share our vision as other organizations, which again, we're focused on the solutions which we agree on. They might be aware, maybe have different beliefs on certain narratives, but it is what it is. If we're focused on the solutions collectively, we get there quickly. So here's just a few of them. Sustain, which is the Alliance for Better Food and Farming. I've been in touch with them for years. Some great work, lots of good programs, solutions focused like us. They're a registered charity, so they're very connected to government, and they lobby government, and so they're doing great work, and maybe believe more in terms of the government assistance and support, and how important the government is in what we need to do. Where we've got another alliance called the People's Food and Farming Alliance, who I mentioned earlier, who are a newer alliance, who they're all focused on obviously similar things. We share the same vision and mission, but the People's Food and Farming Alliance is more about people power, creating these solutions and being not for profit, owned by the people, which again we're aligned with. But here, just a few of others, as I've put on there. As you'll see, Nature Friendly Farming Network, the Organic Growers Alliance, the Land Workers Alliance, which you've probably heard of, Fruit and Veg Alliance, lots of different alliances, the Ecological Land Co-op, who are doing fantastic work. And lastly, just to mention the Kindling Trust. I love what they do. Another not-for-profit co-op, Manchester-based. They recently, well, I say recently, it must be over a year now ago, they raised, I think it was about £1.2 million to acquire land, maybe up to 200 acres, focused on agroforestry, which is we're a huge believer in. So we there's a lot of work that we can do together. And still on food systems, away from the kind of growing side, production. So using the harvests, what is produced from these horticultural and arable farms, and making pre-made food, locally made organic food. And this could be anything. I've just put here, just easy examples as in soups and salads and sauces and so many different things that can be produced, as well as the smoothies and the juices, if you think more from a health perspective. So using access to this healthy organic produce, local people producing pre-made food, because it's all about easy access. If you want to get healthy food to people, it has to be easily accessible, and convenient is a big one. You could drop off on their doorstep a box of fruits and vegetables. That is still not convenient enough for a lot of people. So in terms of easy access, it's already been produced, it's already made. The distribution network that I'll talk about shortly, in terms of home delivery and local collection points to make it accessible. And then the community hubs, which I've mentioned within those spaces, retail that will be selling pre-made foods and other staple items as well, food items. And what we say, the eateries, like the concept of local cafes or restaurants within those hubs, again, all locally created food, locally made food. So that's the production side. And Farmacy Co-op is also a huge believer, as I've said, in terms of that logistical infrastructure and the importance of the distribution network. And so what we've created so far is a distribution network, and as the name would suggest, we can distribute out from one location. We distribute from Bakewell in the Peak District as north as Leeds at the moment, and as south as Hertfordshire. So we've got a pretty big distribution network already, and we have national drivers. We have what's called, we call regional drivers, with guys with vans and girls with vans, and also mainly local drivers, volunteers, where we drop off boxes at their homes, and these people then drive around their local communities delivering boxes. So this distribution network is expanding, and what we're focused on is expanding all over the UK to get into as many communities as possible. So we can offer home delivery for that convenience, but we're going to be, for next year, really focused on what we call local collection points. So these are all sorts of venues. So this could be pubs, cafes, social clubs, churches. We've got churches already doing this, where people can order from us online, have it delivered to the home if they want, and pay that premium, or see where the local collection point is and pay a reduced or a cheaper delivery cost, and then go collect it locally. And these local collection points, as what we see, is the beginnings of a community hub, etc. And so this, the distribution network, this infrastructure, again, people, we own it, the people own it, the drivers, the people use it, we're all going to own it. And this is the alternative, these are the alternative systems that we need. And this network will and is going to connect local communities all over the country. So just to touch on community hubs, we've got one at the moment, which is the hub in in Bakewell, where we pack, pick, bit of warehousing, and local people come and we have lots of volunteers and local people come in to kind of chat and socialize. So that's the first one, which we're creating blueprints for in terms of operations and processes and systems. As you can imagine, it's quite complicated, packing hundreds of boxes and picking hundreds of boxes. So the community hubs and that particular strategy, we're going to be working, Farmacy Co-op are going to be working with One Community Network and also E-Communitas Cooperative to develop, to deliver this community hub model all over the country. So One Community Network will be focused on those local economies and looking at for current empty venues that we could use. And E-Communitas Cooperative will be building the buildings and those new venues on land. And then what Farmacy Co-op will be focused on bringing in is focus on the food and the health side of things. So as I said earlier, that the retail, the farmers market, the eateries and the health services. So that's what Farmacy Co-op will be doing. And there is funding available. We've got applications in now for creating more community hubs. And health and wellbeing, as mentioned, with Farmacy Co-op is a big focus on ours. It always has been part of our ethos. Again, as I mentioned, focus on the solutions, organic and natural products. The funding that we're going to be getting in as well is going to be more focused on health and wellbeing, on health programs. We did get some funding a couple of years ago when we did a basic immune boosting program where people got the healthy food, fruits and veggies for over a 4-week period, some natural supplementation, a 4-week program. People filled out a basic kind of holistic questionnaire at the beginning and at the end. And you could see the health benefits. They had guidance from us throughout. So that there's so many different ideas we've had for years to develop these programs where it's as simple as we can deliver what's needed, food and supplements and everything like that to their homes if needed. We can give them guidance online. They can come to the community hub spaces and access services, etc. And yeah, there's other organisations to collaborate around the health and wellbeing side as well. So Farmacy Co-op is what we say, the vehicle which is allowing us to create everything else. It's because we've been operating now for like 2.5 years. We've got history, financial history, and we can access funding and grants and everything like that. Farmacy Co-op, is spreading the awareness of the vision and strategy that I've mentioned. It's promoting nature-friendly farming, local economic systems, as I've mentioned. It's a vehicle to creating this logistical infrastructure, developing the membership and the network, and it's just the catalyst to creating all these other not-for-profit co-ops, which is going to come out of this first project and grow the family